Alright, so here's the thing, guys. Recently, there's this website called Rotten Tomatoes, and those assholes had the audacity to give a negative score to a movie that we really, really like. So, what we need you to do, yes, all of you, is to go to our website, CheshireCaststudios.com, and sign a petition to shut down Rotten Tomatoes, yes, the entire fucking website, for good, because how dare they have an opinion that's different from ours?
Are you sure we're talking about the right Batman movie?
But no, in all seriousness, folks, we're here to talk about The Killing Joke today, and right out of the gate, I just want to make it perfectly clear that we are not here to either defend or make excuses for the movie. Because the movie, just like the original graphic novel, has been subject to some controversy, namely because of certain things that happened to a certain character of a certain gender. I'll let you all guess who that is. So what we'll try doing here today is we'll try to have an open and honest discussion about the most recent film adaptation of the Killing Joke graphic novel, and see where it goes.
Yep.
So, LaughingMan, your thoughts on the Killing Joke movie?
Well, to be honest, I really wasn't a huge fan of the graphic novel. Sorry, God damn it, wrong. I'm a huge fan of the graphic novel. What the fuck am I talking about? Anyways, to be honest, I really wasn't a huge fan of this adaptation of the graphic novel. This is going to sound like sacrilege coming from a huge, Batman and Joker fan, but aside from the obviously polarizing and I guess maybe even negatively reviewed, what do you call it, a prologue, half hour 45-minute long prologue of setting up Batgirl to knock her down in the beginning of this thing. Even the last half of the video that seems to be getting a lot of praise with Collider and The Nerdist and Bleeding Cool and a couple other sites like that, nerd sites. I think that the video was missing quite a few little nuances that the comic has. And I've got the deluxe edition comic sitting right here in front of me, and I have a couple pages turned and marked. And I guess I'll go over those in a bit. What about you, Max? What do you think? You misogynist pig.
Well, I was gonna say, I actually enjoyed the film adaptation, namely because that cunt Barbara Gordon gets shot in the spine. No, of course not, of course.
Fucking hell, Max.
Well, I was just playing my part.
Nice to have an objective opinion. Man, you're as objective as IO9.
Well, you could say that I am the Joker to their Batman. We're polar opposites. But no, seriously, I actually enjoyed the film adaptation for the most part, including the first 28 minutes, which is the prologue part, starring Batgirl. And I guess let's start there, because that seems to be the major point of contention with a lot of critics of this movie. The fact that ostensibly Bruce Timm and the second writer of the movie, Brian Azzazello, who actually I enjoy his work, several of the stories that he's written in the comic book world, but basically, according to some people of the hashtag progressive persuasion, Bruce Timm and Brian Azzazello's greatest sin is the fact that they did not, as you said, try to bring Batgirl up, which I'm not sure was really their intent, because I went back and reread some of the articles where they talk about how they were planning to expand the original graphic novel, and in reality all they said was that the story would focus on Batgirl, but there really was no talk about turning the prequel into a hashtag you go girl type of story where Batgirl kicks all sorts of ass, and I'm actually grateful that the first 28 minutes was not that. Instead, what Bruce Timm and Brian Azzazello tried doing was they tried to portray Batgirl as a human being who has flaws and who makes mistakes.
How dare those misogynists show women in a light that makes them look human? I mean, no, they have to be a fucking Mary Sue. That's what Star Wars got right.
Absolutely.
The woman can't have any flaws whatsoever. She has to be able to use the Force on command. Blah 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 blah. It comes back to the Galbrush paradox, where anytime you give a woman flaws, it's practically stamped with misogyny right out of the fucking gate.
Mm-hmm. And the thing is, to quote the man himself, Bruce Timm, here we go. We were aware that it's a little risky. There's definitely some stuff in the first part of the movie that's going to be controversial. Here's where we came down on that specific issue. It was really important to us to show that both of the characters, meaning Batman and Batgirl, make some pretty big mistakes. I mean, his parental skills aren't really all that great, so... Mm-hmm. So maybe never having had any kids of his own, he doesn't realize that if you tell a kid not to do something, they're going to want to do it even more. And then she makes some mistakes, and then he kind of overreacts to her mistakes, and then she overreacts to his overreaction. So
then she has sex with him.
So, to conclude this quote, so it's very human. It's a very understandable story. So again, the thing is...
Well, you know, I don't think that when a parent tells a kid to do something and the kid decides to do it anyway, that the kid fucks the parent. I think that's half the fucking problem.
Well, there is such a thing as Oedipus complex. So, but
I know they're trying to set up like sexual tension, but I just didn't see a whole lot of it, to be honest.
Well, the thing is, to me it kind of makes sense, because ever since the release of the first trailer, I had this theory in mind that the Killing Joke, the movie version of The Killing Joke, wasn't just going to be a direct adaptation of the source material. Mm-hmm. Instead, it was going to be more like an amalgamation of the original graphic novel and also Batman the Animated Series, for obvious reasons. I mean, this is Bruce Timm. Mm-hmm. And the thing is, if you know your Batman the Animated Series, it was canon in that universe that Bruce Wayne and Barbara Gordon were an item. This is heavily implied in the Batman Beyond TV show, as well as that mostly forgettable Mystery of the Batwoman movie.
Yeah, I was going to say both of those.
And the thing is, I've read a lot of articles dedicated to this controversial scene, and most of them, especially the ones that are written by female authors, describe that scene as quote-unquote creepy. And here's what I'm wondering. If this were, as I said, a #YouGoGirl story starring Batgirl, where she hooks up with, say, Nightwing, who, as most people know, that's Dick Grayson, the first Robin, and if you've ever seen him, he looks like, what's his face? He looks like Ryan Gosling. We're talking basically a 10 out of 10 beefcake. So if this was Batgirl hooking up with him and not regretting it afterwards, would people have a problem with that scene?
Probably not. But it's the dynamic of Batman being the mentor, being like the teacher, and then the student falling in love with the teacher.
Which actually happens in real life.
True. It happens in real life, but Max, we can't have real life in our fiction. We can't make these characters realistic. We have to make them realistic. Oops.
Also, by the way, just to demonstrate how out of touch these people are with their inner geeks, I suppose, despite the fact that they'll claim that they're the biggest Batman fans ever, but I remember reading one of the reviews, and the critic complained that they disapproved of the Batman/Batgirl relationship because, well, it's almost like Batman is this mentor figure, and Batgirl is like this rookie that's studying under him. Excuse me, have you ever read any Batman comic ever? Do you know of the Batman family, that's pretty much the dynamic? That Batman is like the patriarch, and everyone else, the numerous Robins, Batgirls, Batwing, whatever, are under him?
I don't know. I think that in that sex scene that Batman was studying underneath Barbara.
Well, she was clearly on top of things.
Yes,
during that scene.
Empowerment, but she was the dominant one. She's the one who instigated the sex. Empowerment, right? Oh wait, it was written by a man. That's why.
Absolutely. And Batman was not deemed to be hot enough, unlike, like I said, Nightwing or, say, even Jason Todd. So, hence the problem.
Well, again, to me, the entire thing kind of felt out of place, as did the entire prequel, or whatever the hell you want to call it, the new addition to the Killing Joke. Just felt unnecessary.
Well, we kind of knew that was going to be the case.
We did, because of the whole entire feminist backlash with the Joker's anniversary Batgirl comic that we covered.
Yeah, well, not only that, but I also remember reading an interview with Timm and him talking about how it was almost a necessity to expand the original story, because if you make a direct adaptation of The Killing Joke, then you're not going to get a feature-length movie. At the most, you're going to get like a 45, 50-minute short. And that's kind of like, if you take the running time of the movie, which is something like 75 minutes, if I'm not mistaken, and the actual Killing Joke stuff, the story, the actual Killing Joke story begins at around the 30th minute mark, then yeah. But I'll tell you this much. The prequel stuff, it did not ruin the rest of the movie. Like, you read some of the reports from people and it's like, oh my god, it was so repulsive that I could not even enjoy the movie. Nah, not really, because the thing is, you can always fast forward, and then the real Killing Joke starts, which I know you have some issues with it, but I enjoyed it for the most part.
Yeah, well, again, I didn't care for the beginning of The Killing Joke with all the Batgirl stuff, because it just felt so tacked on. I mean, it felt like they were almost like trying to appease people by doing. I understand the running time thing, but it felt like an appeasement. Okay, we got to build up this character. We got to make her more tragic. She can't just be there to take a bullet and then be like the damsel in distress. We gotta empower her somehow. We gotta make her a more rounded character. And people still bitch. There's an old what do you call it, like a fairy tale or whatever hell you call it, where a man, a child, and a donkey are walking down the street, and they're gonna sell the donkey in town. And then somebody walks by and says, why aren't any of you guys riding the donkey? Are you guys fucking dumb? Mm-hmm. I'm paraphrasing here, obviously. So the father lets the son ride on the donkey, and they continue walking to town. Then all of a sudden, an old lady walks by and looks at the old man and scorns the son, saying, how come you, with your youth and your young legs, ride on top of the donkey while your poor father is walking aside? So they switch position, or so they switch. And then all of a sudden, here comes someone a little bit younger saying, oh, look at that poor child has to walk while that father is sitting on top of the donkey. What a disgusting thing. So then they're like, oh, well, okay, what are we going to do now? So the father and son decide to carry the donkey. And so they carry the donkey, and they get to a bridge, and the donkey freaks out and falls off the bridge and drowns. So when you try to please everybody loses. Mm-hmm. I mean, they honestly, this culture of trying to apologize and trying to appease everybody, it's fucking bullshit. Because everybody's like, oh, if you don't do what I say, then I demand an apology. You know what? You know what fixes that? Don't apologize. Mm-hmm. It worked for Sarah Silverman. She made an Asian racial joke on stage, and of course, a bunch of Asians got offended, and so they demanded an apology from her. Right? You know what she did? She told more jokes, and the organization shut the fuck up.
Well, then again, another thing that Sarah Silverman did was tell a lie about an owner of a comedy club who ostensibly paid her less because she was a female comedian. And then the owner actually came out and said, well, no, that's not what happened. She was not scheduled to perform, so I gave her a guest spot and actually paid her, which is something I don't normally do. And then in response to that, Sarah Silverman, as opposed to recanting that story or apologizing to the comedian, what she said was, well, my mistake was actually naming the guy by the name. I should have kept it anonymous.
Yeah, because then no one could argue about your fiction. Yeah, well, again, it just comes back down to the fact that the only way you can get people to shut up is to not apologize.
I mean, not to take away from your point, but I'm just saying that Sarah Silverman might not be the best example.
Oh yeah, I'm not saying she's a fucking angel either, but I mean, you see assholes on every side. But again, I just think that this whole entire culture of, oh my god, you offended me, I demand an apology. Max, you and I misread that one email from that fan. He demands an apology.
Oh, No.
Yeah.
Not gonna happen.
We'll cut that bit.
I don't even know who the fan was because I don't really care.
But see, I mean, it's the fact that artists shouldn't have to care about what other people think. They should just make art that appeals to them. Mm-hmm. Because otherwise, what you do is you have people backtracking, like Alan Moore, the creator of the Killing Joke. This one article on Dose.com titled "Let's Have an Adult Conversation About Batman's Creepy New Sex Scene," posted by BJ Mendelsohn. I think his initials kind of spell out CUCK.
A little bit, maybe.
I mean, he makes several points though, but he comes in with this review almost right out of the gate saying the Killing Joke is okay. I can't do this without being completely honest. The Killing Joke is an overrated garbage pile of a graphic novel from the 80s. It's a relic of a time when everything in comics had to be grim and gritty because the industry decided, stupidly, that it should only cater to a hardcore audience of comic readers instead of making comics fun and accessible to everyone. Now, everybody has their own opinion about this comic, and if he doesn't like it, I have no problem. You know, that's your thing, dude. You don't like it, that's fine. I think in his entire article he's missing a lot of the subtext and a lot of the nuances that I'll get to in a bit, that I think the Killing Joke DVD Blu-ray completely missed out on. But he also goes immediately afterwards to say the Killing Joke is written by Alan Moore, whom everyone in the comic book industry worships. Like, that's a bad thing, because the guy is an accomplished writer. He made some really fucking fantastic things.
No, he's a misogynist. He shot Barbara Gordon.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry, but he is one of the most feminist writers out there. I mean, if you sex-positive feminist, which he's a sex-positive feminist. Just look at Lost Girls, and you get an idea of which end of the spectrum, the feminist spectrum, this particular reviewer is compared to Alan Moore. But he goes on to say Alan Moore has gone on to distance himself from the story at every opportunity.
Can you really blame the man?
Well, a couple clarifications on this. He's not. I don't think he ever really distanced himself. Everything I've read suggests that he distanced himself from this particular story because he said, to paraphrase, that this is kind of the comic that made comics less innocent. This is where, like, real shit was starting to be brought into comics, and he thinks that ever since he wrote this book, comics have lost a lot of the innocence that they used to have.
See, again, it's the man's opinion, fair enough, but that's kind of like Christopher Nolan taking the blame for what James Holmes did.
Exactly.
At the Dark Knight Rises premiere.
Yeah.
You know, it's not really, they're not really connected.
Yeah, but I mean, again, that's just his own opinion. That's why he's distancing himself from the comic. On the other hand, if you had a fucking witch hunt on your ass,
such as was the case with Raphael Albuquerque, the artist who drew the Batgirl Joker variant cover, that got him into all sorts of trouble with the progressive crowd, who, as you said,
regressive.
Well, hashtag progressive, which equals regressive.
Yeah, because these are so far from true progressivism that it's just sickening. It's totalitarianism. It's censorship. But, I mean, if you had a fucking witch hunt, a bunch of people screaming at you, calling you names, which you obviously are not, you would probably distance yourself from whatever, you know, you'd probably recant whatever it was that, you know, got people so fucking fed up and riled.
If you want to keep your job, yes.
Well, if you just want to save face, otherwise, you know, you get doxxed and all kinds of shit that people worry about on the net for who knows why.
Well, see, the thing is, this is something I noticed back during the, as I said, the Batgirl Joker covers, and where a lot of people tried to distance themselves from the Killing Joke graphic novel, describing it as controversial, if not even problematic. Almost like they were trying to sort of make excuses for an older racist relative, like, oh, you know, well, that story was a product of its time, you know. That's what people used to think back in the day, but now, in this more enlightened era, and if you've been keeping up with the comic books, I mean, you have seen what Batgirl has turned into these days.
Right, Little Miss Selfie in the girls' room.
And her arch nemesis is some sort of basically a frat boy who creates a Tinder-esque app and Batgirl decides to stop him because she's concerned that, you know, unsuspecting girls are gonna get raped if they use that app.
Jesus Christ. Well, there used to be an app that where it was like a consensual sex app where each person records himself saying, I am agreeing to consensual sex with insert full name here. Mm-hmm. And each person would record this mini, you know, confessional or whatever, this mini verbal video consent, and it would be uploaded to a server where they could only access it if we had like a court order. So if someone gets sued, that would be an available resource. And what happened was it was called Sexist.
I remember this.
It's like, fucking hell. You again, you can't win. It comes back to this whole entire donkey parable. You try to apologize. You try to do everything for other people. You try to make your stuff as accessible as possible, and people still fucking hate you for it. And people like Alan Moore, you know, just keep making your shit. If you like it, buy it. If you don't, just, you know, ignore it. This entire idea of having to censor people and shut them down is just fucking nuts.
Yeah, so speaking of not giving these people any platform to voice their grievances, let's move on to discuss the actual film adaptation of The Killing Joke and what we thought of, well, basically the second half, the good half.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. Again, the first half just never gelled well with me. I mean, a complete tonal shift. The Killing Joke is a dark and very, very serious comic.
Yeah.
I mean, it's when, like we said before, it's when the Joker, the game was changed forever. You change things forever.
Yeah. Speaking of which, just to prove just how seminal The Killing Joke was, Heath Ledger version of the Joker, the whole, do you want to know how I got these scars and how his story keeps changing? Yeah, where do you think Christopher Nolan and friends got that from?
This is the comic that made the Joker something beyond a thief, a killer, because, you know, he killed people like stealing diamonds and shit in the original version, but this is where things took such a turn and made the Joker genuinely interesting. It wasn't because he shot a woman, it was because this is where you see behind the mask. This is where you start seeing, like, the monster, you know. It's
not even a monster. You see the man,
yes,
who eventually becomes the monster, and you see the unfortunate series of events, the one bad day, as it were, that leads to a poor,
normal person,
down on his luck schlub, a normal person, yes,
yep,
turning into a homicidal maniac. Yeah, and the reason why the Joker does it in a twisted way, I always perceive this as almost like a cry for help. Him trying to make Batman and the rest of the world understand that, in a sense, he's a victim. Not a victim in a SJW sense of the word, but a legit victim of circumstances.
Right, and you see this in the comic, and one fucking panel in particular that was completely omitted from the goddamn animated video. And that's where the Joker looks at the viewer, looks at me while I'm sitting there looking at this comic, and he has this completely torn puppy dog, like he almost looks like an animal that's kicked too many times, you know? He has this look on his face, and he's talking about how World War III could have been caused by geese on a computer screen. And he looks at the screen, he looks at the viewer and says, "It's all a joke. Everything anybody ever valued or struggled for, it's all a monstrous, demented gag. So why don't you see the funny side? Why aren't you laughing?"
Yes, like I said, it's a cry for help.
Yes, and it's one of those scenes that was completely bastardized, because when I heard Joker say this exact same line in the video, he's beating the shit out of Batman.
Yes,
they're in the upside down room, and he's just kicking the shit out of Batman with this hateful look on his face, and it's so out of context. So fucking out of context.
See, this is where I would disagree, because...
Well, you're wrong, and everyone going to this petition, we need to sign a petition saying that we should kick Max out of CCS because he disagrees with me.
Hashtag shut down CineMax.
Yes.
He's too sexy for CCS, at least according to Tumblr.
Well, you're welcome, because I'm the one who made that little minigame.
Yeah, but who provided the actual vocals that made all the tamburinas out there wet their pants from joy?
Oh, yeah.
Hey there, ladies!
I wanted to make a little thing where you get a high score and all of a sudden CineMax turns into the Dark Master.
Well, of course. Just like the Joker, one bad day, and I go from being a Tumblr sex god to a complete creep. But anyway, in my interpretation, you could see that scene as almost a cry for help, but that version of the Joker is more exasperated, more frustrated that Batman does not see his point of view. It's not that he enjoys beating him, it's more like, why aren't you laughing? Why can't you see my point of view?
Why do you keep up this charade of justice when there is no justice?
Yeah, there's a great line, I'm not sure if it's in the original graphic novel, but he says something to the effect of, by clinging to reality, you deny the reality of the situation.
Yep.
So, well, there have been several changes to the original graphic novel. None of them, I would say, either ruin or tarnish it. As a matter of fact, there is one, well, I'll let you voice your grievances, but... okay, so there was one scene that was not present in the original graphic novel, but I personally think was a welcomed addition, and that's when Batman is interrogating... so first he beats up a couple of random thugs in an alleyway, but then he goes to visit like a crime boss of some kind to see if he has any information on the Joker, and there is a great line by the crime boss who tells Batman that, look, we might be scared of you, but we're terrified of the Joker. Mm-hmm. So that one little moment, I actually enjoyed.
Well, along those same lines, almost immediately after the scene you're talking about, there's a scene that was added that really puts more ambiguity on whether or not Joker raped Barbara Gordon, which has a lot of people upset. And I can actually almost see why. He shows up and he approaches a couple of prostitutes, asking if they've seen the Joker. And they say, no, he hasn't been around lately. Usually he comes out and finds us whenever he breaks out of Arkham. I guess he maybe found a new girl.
Yeah, but see, before that, a thug that Batman is interrogating also mentions the fact that usually, after the Joker breaks out of Arkham, he comes recruiting people. Not this time. So I can kind of see how that line might be taken out of context, but if you combine the two scenes together...
Right. Basically, Joker's not going back to his old habits. He's doing something completely new, which includes not hiring henchmen and not fucking.
Yeah. So this time it's serious. Plus, in the hospital, Batgirl pretty much confirms it by saying that this time it's different. You should have seen his eyes. This time it's for real. Like, they're setting up the fact that this is going to be the final confrontation between Batman and the Joker. And I believe, speaking of that, by the way, I believe you mentioned that you were disappointed that they did not include the, I guess you could call it voiceover, when Batman arrives at the amusement park.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of things that the comic does that I just looking at it, and I could just be being pretentious, though, but there's a lot of juxtapositions that just add so much weight to the comic. Like you mentioned, Batman has like this entire monologue when he's talking to the fake Joker. First of all, like when Batman first shows up in the asylum and he's watching the Joker play with cards, there's some text up in the top left corner of the panel that says there were these two guys in a lunatic asylum,
which is a foreshadowing of the ending.
Absolutely, the foreshadowing is so fucking thick in this thing that it's just I love it. Anyways, so Batman sits down and says, "Hello, I came to talk. I've been thinking lately about you and me, about what's going to happen to us in the end. We're going to kill each other, aren't we?" And he has this entire like mini conversation, one-way conversation with the Joker. And then once after Barbara's been shot, after he finds out where Joker is keeping the commissioner, the entire monologue, the entire plea is being replayed while he's at this carnival. And while he's fighting the Joker, and they're all little text boxes though, but they're all flashbacks to what he was saying earlier. And it's Batman and Joker essentially fighting to the death. Mm-hmm. The entire thing is being mirrored. So I think that's just something that was kind of missed, and it may not hold a whole lot of weight for a lot of people though. But to me, it just adds so much weight to the comic, and other parts that I kind of enjoyed are some of the juxtapositions of some of the panels from like the Joker flashbacks and flash forwards. Like, for instance, when Joker's having his first flashback about him and his wife, he right at the last thing where she basically says that he's really good in the sack. She holds out her hand, and he's reaching out to her hand, and you can see the mirror behind her head, and it's his reflection. And the very next panel, it's brought back to the future, or it's brought back to the present, but it's him as the Joker holding his hand out to a laughing clown, like fortune teller, and he's seeing his reflection.
Yeah, the transitions in the comic are just beautiful.
Yes, the transitions are fantastic, and the transitions make you wonder if Joker's not just making this shit up as he goes.
Well, he kind of admits to it later on when he says that sometimes he remembers his origin story one way, sometimes it's completely different, and hey, if I'm gonna have an origin story, I prefer it to be multiple choice.
Exactly, and see, this is what I mean by these transitions are just so fucking beautiful, and almost every single one of them was missed in the animated video. And I don't want to be a total nitpicker about it though, but these are important. The fact that these transitions are here, it almost plays to the fact that Joker, this could be real, this could be how it happened, or he could just be seeing things and just making things up as he goes. It could be another delirium, it could be another, you want to know how I got these scars moment. I mean, again, Heath Ledger, each one of those scar stories is pertinent to his current situation. I had a girlfriend once, beautiful like you, and he's threatening freaking what's her face.
Jill, what's her face? Mega Gyllenhaal.
Yeah, we'll call her Rachel. Anyways, not Tom Hanks' wife in this version. Anyways, so it's all these transitions. It's some of the little narrative bits, and of course, then there's the big one, which is always mired in controversy, and that's whether or not Batman killed the Joker.
Well, first of all, no. Jesus Christ, no. And I just gotta say, when I was watching the movie and we got to the ending and the camera pans down, for a second there I was terrified because I was like, uh-oh, are they actually gonna go for it?
Yeah.
Because the entire idea came from I know fans have been speculating for a while, but this theory got legs only once Grant Morrison made an appearance on Kevin Smith's podcast. And he said that in his interpretation, Batman always ends up killing the Joker, which doesn't really make sense because, like, 5 panels before that, Batman specifically tells the Joker that, no, I don't want to hurt you, I'm going to do it by the book, I want to help you. So, how does it make any sense for him to try to reach out to the Joker and say, I don't want to fight, I want to help you, and then the Joker tells his joke, which is, by the way, an allegory for his relationship with Batman.
Yep.
There were 2 lunatics in an asylum once who tried to escape.
Again, another callback.
Yeah. How does it make any sense for Batman to then kill him?
Well, maybe it's more like a thing about he's basically saying we're going to end up killing each other. He goes in there begging to practically help the Joker, saying, we're going to eventually kill each other, and if you don't let me help you, then we're going to be forced to try to kill each other. And when the Joker eventually says, I'm beyond help, and I can't walk across your flashlight because I'm afraid I'm going to fall, Batman, I'm not subscribing to this theory, but the theory kind of says that Batman kills the Joker because there's no other way.
But again, all the evidence that they present, like, oh, he reaches out for his neck. No, he puts his hands on his shoulder for support because he's laughing like a maniac.
Or he has that little needle thing that he kicked out of the Joker's hand, which in this version they show the thing malfunctioning and breaking, but that needle thing that he shakes people's hands and they get basically like Joker gassed, toxined. There's a scene where like he kicks the thing out of the Joker's hand and then Joker hits him and Batman gets up and it looks like he's looking into his hand like he picked something off the floor. And then at the end, the Joker and the Batman are laughing, and you hear the sirens coming, and it starts again. It kind of like mirrors the beginning with like Batman's headlights coming into the frame, except now it's the cop cars.
Yeah.
And there's the exact same black pool of rainwater in the very, very first panel and the very, very last panel.
Yeah.
And you see the Joker laughing, and Batman's laughing, and all of a sudden you see the ha-ha-ha's on the bottom, and you hear there's sirens, and all of a sudden, bam, the laughing stops, and the sirens keep going and just fade to black. You see that little light going right down the middle, like it's the flashlight that Batman is holding out for the Joker, the Lunatics in Asylum story. And you see the light, like he's holding the light out for him, and then the light's gone. Like he actually turned off the light when Joker was halfway across.
Mm-hmm.
But that's just one of those theories, a film theory. No, I'm not going to do that shit. But that's just what some people are saying. And I was actually kind of curious whether or not they were going to leave that ambiguous or not, which they didn't. So,
yeah, well, it's still ambiguous because he doesn't kill him. We don't hear a neck snapping sound effect at the end, but I don't know. I always felt like the story was above it. Like the final cut, the brilliance of the story is that most Batman stories would in fact end with Batman beating the crap out of the Joker and then dragging him back into Arkham Asylum. Mm-hmm. Whereas in this case, the two of them just stop. They don't necessarily break character, mm-hmm. but both of them reflect on the futility of their relationship. Both of them admit that they're messed up individuals.
Right.
So instead of the two of them being at each other's throats, Batman actually offers to help, and the Joker, instead of laughing maniacally, it's like, you fool! And he's like, no, I'm sorry, it's just too late for me.
Yep.
And then to defuse the situation, he tells a joke, which is funny, because it's funny to both of mm-hmm. them, because it's like an in-joke between the two of them. They understand that it's about the two of them, their relationship. And that's the beauty of the ending, not the fact that... Because that's like something they would try to pull these days.
Yeah, the twist ending.
Batman looking at the camera and saying, "Hail Hydra."
Yes!
Or rather, "I killed my parents."
I don't like chimichangas.
Yeah.
I could see the whole time.
In the case of Daredevil, yes. So again, to me, the story was always above that. Batman killing the Joker is just cheap shock tactics that would just ruin the entire story to me.
Again, it's just a theory, and I'm not subscribing to it, but it's slightly compelling. But again, the you and I mentioned like the first and last panel and the transitions from panel to panel. A lot of that was just missed out, and it's sorely missed for me at least in the video. Now the ending where Mark Hamill doing the voice of the Joker, telling that joke at the end, that was good. That was pretty good. I actually did enjoy that a lot. That one moment where you see like that little bit of a redeeming quality, and you see like all right, you're gonna beat the shit out of me again and send me back to the asylum. And he's like, no, and it's like, oh,
mm-hmm.
That's what I was waiting for. And this is why I think it's such a great comic. It's not because, oh my god, a woman got shot. It's a piece of trash because a woman got shot. No. There's so much.
There's so much depth.
Yes, I mean every panel is like a work of art, especially in the Deluxe edition where they recolored the fucking thing. That neon orange was fucking. Ugh.
Yeah, if you are gonna read the original graphic novel, get the Deluxe edition. It's much better.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean everyone obviously talks about how much of a genius Alan Moore is, but Brian Bolland, his art is gorgeous.
I know, and it's hyper realistic. It's not like cartoony looking. I mean, every line is just perfect. The emotion it conveys, just the pure emotion, is just amazing.
Although, to give credit to Bruce Timm and company, they did capture some of the most iconic moments from the graphic novel. Not just scenes, I mean the actual art. Especially like the scene that stands out to me is when the Joker, he shoots Barbara Gordon, and she asks him like, why are you doing this? And there's a close-up of his face. He's like the top half of his face is,
here's to crime.
Yeah, it's concealed in shadows. His eyes are just these like small white circles. Yeah, and he says, to prove a point, then he raises a glass, here's to crime. So like those scenes, that actually gave me goosebumps, because I mean the visuals and Mark Hamill's performance, that was great.
Yeah. Although Mark Hamill was starting to sound like he's getting up there in age. I mean, the voice was kind of getting a little bit gravelly.
Well, the man has been voicing the Joker for what, nearly 20 years at this point, so... Successfully, yes. I mean, he's gone through a lot of changes, and actually, to me, the fact that this was Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill who've been voicing these characters, who have actually been these characters for so long, elevated the film adaptation, because if it were anyone else, if it were, say, the guy who voices Batman in the New 52 movies, like Batman vs. Robin, what's his face? You know, the guy who does the generic growly voice.
Or even if it was the dude who plays Bender and did the Joker in Under the Red Hood.
John DiMaggio.
Yep. Yeah, it would have lost a little bit. I mean, it's the fact that these two have a history, and that history is being brought forward into this latest animated movie.
Yeah, because, you know, call me a hopeless fanboy, but I would say that the voice acting alone is worth the price of admission with this movie.
Yeah, I'll give you that.
In fact, I mean, obviously, I don't think Warner Brothers would approve of this, but if someone were to, say, take the audio from the film adaptation and take the visuals from the original source material and make like a motion comic a la Batman Black and White,
yeah,
I think that would be like the ultimate adaptation of The Killing Joke.
Yes, that would be essential. But what do we know, Max? We're just a couple of misogynist pigs, right?
Well, yes, of course. The only reason why we enjoyed the movie is because we got to see Barbara Gordon take her top off and then get shot in the spine. Obviously, that's the only reason.
Yeah, I mean that's why, you know, Collider and Bleeding Cool and Yahoo and The Nerdist all largely praise this video, and then you get to a review of IO9 and it's like shit, and it's like, okay, yeah.
Well, more importantly, if Rotten Tomatoes are to be believed, 50% of the people who have seen The Killing Joke disliked it, but then you actually see the amount of reviews submitted to that website for that movie, and it's like, oh, so this is 50% out of 18 reviews, only 2 of which belong to legitimate websites, such as you said, Collider, and I think the second one is IndieWire, and the rest are from complete internet nobodies who are even more obscure than us.
as if that was possible.
So, like, I don't know. I mean, well, first of all, the fact that The Killing Joke, the film adaptation, it has its flaws, I'll give you that, but the fact that it has 50%, whereas Fembusters has 73, makes me wonder, makes me question the usefulness, the metrics, yeah, basically the validity of the ratings on Rotten Tomatoes. Because, you know, as much as I like poking fun at Batman v Superman and bringing up the fact that that movie has only, like, what, 33% approval rating on Rotten Tomatoes, which is apparently just as much as Suicide Squad has, although I haven't seen the movie for myself, so I'm not going to comment, but I don't know, Rotten Tomatoes, Metacritic...
Well, it depends on who's submitting the metrics, though. I mean, obviously, opinions are subjective. Opinions are like assholes. Everyone's got one. And some movies are going to match your opinion, some won't. That's just the nature of the game. I mean, I really couldn't give a shit what other people think as far as, like, other reviews. If I watch something, then I'll take a look at a review and say, oh, yeah, that's cool. Or maybe I'll even read a review from somebody whose opinions largely fall upon my own, and I'll be like, okay, they kind of like this, maybe I'll give it a shot and make up my own mind afterwards. So, I mean, just because Suicide Squad is getting hammered in the critic in Rotten Tomatoes, I might actually still go see it just for shits and giggles. I mean, it could be a so bad it's good movie, or it could be alright. I really don't have any expectations, and this is coming from a guy who really hates going down to a theater, though, but hey, it's got a Joker in it, what the hell.
Well, unfortunately, from what I've read...
Like 5 minutes, yeah.
Yeah, most of the scenes, some of which you see in the trailer, did not make it into the final cut, so... Actually, from what I've read, this looks like a Fantastic Four or Fantastic situation, the Josh Trank movie.
Oh, no.
Where heavy studio interference.
They had to reshoot a bunch because... I know they had to go in and reshoot a bunch of scenes because it wasn't fun enough. It didn't have that Guardians of the Galaxy vibe, or Deadpool vibe.
Which, I don't know about you, but if I had to choose between a blatant Guardians of the Galaxy knockoff or another depression fest like Batman v Superman, personally, I'd go with the former.
I'm starting to despise the fact that like more and more of these big budget superhero movies, like the filmmakers, they hire these prolific filmmakers. Like obviously this was not the case in J. Like Edgar Wright, right, with Ant-Man. And then the guy is not even permitted to actually fulfill his vision. Instead, he is given a checklist of things that need to be in the movie.
Has to tie into the Marvel Universe, has to tie into this, has to feature this.
Yeah, so as opposed to the movie being a work of art, it's just a product to sell toys, or in the case of Marvel, comic books.
Or an expanded universe.
So keeping that in mind, even though I had my own problems with the first 30 minutes of the Killing Joke movie, at the very least the fact that, well, first of all, the movie got made in the first place in this politically correct climate.
Which is huge.
Yeah, and the fact that Bruce Timm and Brian Azzazello got to tell the story they wanted to tell, you might dislike it, but whatever, that's, as you said, that's already huge. That's a step in the right direction.
Well, again, I don't hate the movie. It's just that if I had to pick the two, I would pick comic every single time. I can when I read it, I hear Mark Hamill's voice in my head. I hear Kevin Conroy. I mean, it's the best way to experience it. But I mean, by all means, go out and check it out, figure it out for yourself. I do not hate the movie. I just think that it missed a few things that made me fall in love with the comic.
Well, speaking of things that we hate, if you want to see a truly terrible Batman story, there's Telltale.
Oh, yeah.
Jesus fucking Christ.
I knew we were going to get to this too, but we can talk about this after. Are we even going to review it? Are we going to play it? Because from everything that you've told me about the synopsis and what happens, this is probably Telltale's laziest attempt at making a game.
I'm going to tell you this much. This is the first Telltale game that I did not buy on day one.
Oh, wow.
That I did not play. And instead, I just went to YouTube and watched a playthrough, and I was glad that I did not waste $25 of my money on this piece of crap, because...
And I mean, we are Telltale fans.
Especially myself, yeah.
Especially you are a Telltale fan, even though, I started corrupting you and made you realize that a lot of the decision making really has no payoff.
Especially in this game.
Well, this is the problem: is we are both huge Batman and Joker fans, and you are a huge Telltale fan, and I enjoy their games as well. I'm not rabid about them, and you're telling people to pass on this.
Well, I'm afraid they have no choice, because if certain...
Oh, it doesn't work.
If the Steam reviews are to be believed, the game is unplayable. Good job, Telltale. Good job.